So, welcome to another episode of the Thrive podcast. And today I greet Lynn on the show, my former coach and mentor, who is a Kundalini Yoga and Enneagram instructor who teaches in the United States and throughout Europe, and is the author of the books Headstart for Happiness and the 9 Keys that combine Kundalini Yoga with the Enneagram. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you found some time for our interview today. And for those in the audience who might be new to the Enneagram, could you provide a brief overview of what it is and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Enneagram is a system of human personality that helps to describe human behavior. So if you have ever had a situation where you wondered why someone behaved the way they did, this is a system that's going to give you a lot of information to decipher that. Some people call it the GPS of wisdom. I call it the Rosetta Stone of human behavior. But what it really is a tool for compassion, both for yourself and for other people. Because when you start to understand the wider context of behavior, your own and other people's, you will have more compassion for both yourself and for others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for explaining it so well. Because when I came across you, it was the first time I heard about the Enneagram. So now recently I see more and more articles in papers on the internet. So I have the feeling it gets more and more popular, whereas in the US, I think it is already quite well known.
It is exploding in popularity, and where we're finding it more now than in years past is in the business world. And that's because the business world has realized it's pure gold. So the idea with the Enneagram is to understand where your attention goes. And the idea is there are 9 basic places of attention that your habit of attention may gravitate towards. So it doesn't say that you're not a unique individual. Of course, you have your own temperament, your own family dynamics, your own personal experience. But much like you are from a country and there are cultural norms that go along with that country, you can almost think of the Enneagram as learning your country of personality. So suddenly you will understand some of the cultural norms of your habit of attention. And again, the same for other people. So the idea is that none of us are having a really pure experience. We all come in with a little bit of a reality distortion. We're staring a little bit too hard into our habit of attention and we are avoiding our blind spot. And this is what the Enneagram helps to identify. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, when I came to see you, it was really because of going forward, improving my business. So what you just mentioned, no, that it is getting more and more popular in the business world makes total sense to me, because it just helps to understand how do I function, so and how do other people work. And once you understand yourself and you understand other people better, then teamwork also gets much easier, no? So how did you become first interested in the Enneagram, and what led you to become an expert in this field?
Yeah, I mean, it's a interesting journey because none of this was really planned. What happened was in 1995, I was in a bookstore in Los Gatos, California, and I saw a book about the Enneagram. I'd never heard of the Enneagram, but I think I just liked the cover. And so I bought it and I took it home. I was actually visiting Los Gatos, but I was living in Boston, Massachusetts at the time. And I started reading it and it kind of went in order. So I thought maybe I'm a 1, maybe I'm a 2. And I got to my type, which is type 7. And I remember thinking like, oh man, like that's exactly me. And it was interesting because not only did it describe my behavior, but it described my motivation, why I was doing what I was doing. So I knew my own behavior, but I actually myself had never recognized the motivation behind it. So it gave me a lot of color and a lot of just context for myself. So that's how I was introduced to it. But I think why I became passionate about it was because at that same time, I was going through a breakup and it was a confusing situation because I had realized that my live-in boyfriend was stealing money from me. He was forging checks and then stealing my bank statements. And it was a really confusing situation because he's stealing money to take me on vacation. So like I was young, I was in my 20s, and I just couldn't process what was happening. The Enneagram also gives you levels of development. So you can read about the types when they're healthy, when they're really self-aware and they're sharing their strengths. And you can also read about the types when they are in a low level of awareness and they are sharing their weaknesses. So I was able to guess what my ex-boyfriend's type probably was and read about the kind of the low level functioning behavior. And it was a match. And so suddenly I had a way to understand what had happened. And it wasn't that it excused it, but I had a context for it. So it helped me heal a lot faster. And that was really when I became very passionate about learning more, because this has been so useful to me, not really just on my own, but helping me kind of decipher this really confusing relationship. So I'm studying it, but I'm actually a finance person by training. I'm a certified public accountant and I had a career in finance. So that was my job. And I was doing that for over 20 years. At the time when I found the Enneagram, I was living in Massachusetts, but I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. Eventually, I moved back to San Francisco and I was continuing my finance career, but just pursuing the Enneagram as a hobby. And as luck would have it, a lot of the very senior teachers are from the San Francisco Bay Area. So I was able to get a great education in my hobby just by luck, being at the right place at the right time. And I remember once I was working my regular finance job, and it was a tiring job and it was stressful. And then I was sitting in the basement of a church because that was where they were doing the Enneagram training that evening. And I remember sitting there and thinking, like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? But there was something in me that was really, really drawn to the Enneagram. So I kept pursuing it. Eventually, I did a whole life restart. So in 2012, I moved from San Francisco, California to Athens, Greece. At the beginning, I continued my finance work, but eventually I decided to stop doing that and focus full-time on the Enneagram. And so that is when it kind of became more of a career, less of a hobby. And when I wrote my first book and then my second book, and that's kind of how it's unfolded. But it was not something I planned. It was really something that kind of unfolded as each step of the journey, continued.
And luckily, you found that way. Because what I find really unique about Lynn is that she uses the Enneagram and it really helps us to understand ourselves better, other people better. What I also found super interesting is when you know your Enneagram type, that it also can explain you how you perceived your childhood. And this is often where all our behaviors and our patterns start. And what I find so unique about your work is that you then combine your coaching with Kundalini Yoga. And Kundalini Yoga, for those of you who don't know it, Lynn will explain it in a moment. But with Kundalini Yoga, for myself personally, it's really great to break through patterns, to bring stuff from the unconsciousness up, and to kind of integrate it, to transform it, and to really work on ourselves. So can you explain to our listeners what is Kundalini Yoga and how does it help your clients on their journey while you are coaching them?
Yeah, so Kundalini Yoga is called the yoga of awareness, and it is quite different than other forms of yoga. Yoga, in its original incarnation, was a technology for enlightenment. So it was a technology to raise our consciousness, and that was really the point. When yoga came to the West, we chopped off a lot of that enlightenment, reaching, mind training piece and focused more on the physical practice, the asanas, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There is a lot of benefit in the physical practice of yoga. Kundalini Yoga, however, goes back more to the original idea, which is we're here to raise our consciousness. So in a Kundalini Yoga class, there's going to be a lot more focus on breath work, a lot more focus on strengthening the nervous system, and a lot more of a focus on meditation. So it can feel simpler and slower and more meditation oriented than other forms of yoga. But if you want change in your life, it is probably the best form of yoga to use because it works quickly. And what it is that combination of strengthening the nervous system, learning to work with your breath. It sheds all of those emotional blocks that are holding us back. So when I work with people, I'm actually not interested in hearing about their childhood. Not that that's not valid, it absolutely is, but that's not where I focus. I focus more on where are you now? What is the thing that you are trying to get to? What's the energetic block that might be holding you back? And often we can figure that out based on someone's Enneagram type. And then what I've done is linked Kundalini yoga sets and meditations with that exact block. And you can just sort of accelerate your growth that way. So I talk about it, it's like you're lost in the woods and you're trying to find your way home. The Enneagram is going to give you this amazing map. It's going to say, here's where you are, and here is exactly where you need to get to, and here's the route. But it's not going to give you any of the supplies to make the journey. Kundalini yoga is going to give you all the supplies. You're going to have lots of energy. You're going to have a strong nervous system, but it doesn't tell you where to go. If you put the two systems together, now you've got the map, now you've got the supplies. And so you can really start to accelerate your personal growth. And that's what I teach.
Mm. Yeah, and I can say from experience, they both go very well together. Like I found your coaching very holistic. It felt very complete. Because of just the things that you just described, how they complement each other. So I think you already mentioned it, but like, how can understanding one's Enneagram type contribute to our personal growth, to more self-awareness, especially for busy mothers and entrepreneurs? Because many of my listeners are most of them are entrepreneurs and many of them are also mothers.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question. So what it's going to do at a very basic level is it's going to help you understand things that you intuitively know, but you see it in a more codified way. So some people are really good at detail and they are not good at the big picture. Some people are prone to workaholism and they have a hard time relaxing. Some people focus on others and they have a hard time with self-care. You already kind of sense that, but this is a way to really see it in, very clear 3D Technicolor. And not only does it say, this is what you're doing, it says, this is why you're doing it. And here's how to start to balance that behavior. So it's going to help you understand your innate strengths. It's also going to help you see your blind spots. And a blind spot, by definition, you're going to need help seeing. You won't be able to see it. It's a blind spot. So without some systems and tools to see those things, we can get really stuck. So that's at a very general level. As an entrepreneur or in the business world, it's going to help you understand better how you're being perceived by your clients, by your employees, by everybody who kind of is in your orbit. It's also going to help you see what you're just not necessarily naturally good at, so you can compensate for that. And it's really nice because a lot of business leaders will come to me and say, I don't have to fight with myself anymore. Like now I clearly see this is what I'm good at. I already knew that. This is what it's just not going to come easily to me. So I'm going to delegate that, or I'm going to find a way to have somebody support me so I don't need to keep trying to be something I'm not. So that's what happens on the business front. I think on the parenting front, I mean, it's a tremendously useful tool in two different ways. First, it helps you as a parent understand how you are coming to your child. And again, we all come with a reality distortion. So we all think everyone else in the world is having our experience, except sometimes they behave really strangely. That is not true. It's going to show that your experience is actually probably radically different than your child's. And so your child is experiencing you differently than you think you are being perceived. And it's an interesting question on typing children. So we are trained not to type children too young, but of course, as you know, the Enneagram and you have your child, you are going to notice patterns. So the idea is to see if you can have an idea of where your child's attention is going. Don't say that they're necessarily a type because people change and they're, evolving as young beings, but you can also start to kind of speak to them where they're at. One of the most powerful trainings I went to was a training where we were focusing on the Enneagram type 1, which is called the perfectionist. And the question to the panelists was how, like, what was your wake-up call? When did you realize you really needed to start looking at your personality? And it was a woman who said, I'm a mom. And when my daughter was 7 years old, she turned to me and said, Mom, nothing I ever do is good enough for you. And the woman said it broke her heart because she knew she was right. And she knew at that moment, like, her perfectionistic tendencies, which in a certain way can be a strength, were too much. And she needed to start to balance that so she didn't make her child feel bad about herself. And that was really her wake-up call. So again, the Enneagram can give you a really nice roadmap for, this is how you're actually out of balance, and here's how to come more into balance. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautifully explained and so important, no? Like I can just say as a mother, I mean, when we are parenting our child, we really want to give our best, but of course we do mistakes, and also, yeah, it's better we understand ourselves and our child, no, as better can our parenting become. And that's really, I can just say from experience, sometimes it's really challenging. And especially when the child is very different from oneself, no, then it's can be even more challenging. So
it's that. I mean, it really is. And again, it's not black and white. It's not like you're a great parent or a terrible parent. Everyone's got great parenting moments and less great
yes.
and it's, it's a lot of it's around intention and how can you repair
Mm-hmm.
when you've made a mistake, and how can you understand your child in a deeper way and speak to them in a way that they can hear. And I think that that's a dance, that's a dynamic situation. It's not that you nail it and it's over. It's kind of a constant effort. So yeah, I am not a parent. I think it is one of the most difficult and admirable jobs there is. Like, I look at my parenting friends with tremendous respect. It's a hard job.
Yeah, and I think for self-development, it's really good.
I hear
Because
that a
what you
lot. Yes, I hear that a lot.
because what you just mentioned, no, about the client who just realized that when her daughter told her that, and I think we all know that as parents, these moments when our children turn to us and say, "Hey, mom, you're like this and that," or "Why are you always saying that?" And you think, "Oh my God, yes." So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, so let's go back to the entrepreneurs, but I think it's also important for everyone. But how can the Enneagram type give us insights on achieving a healthy work-life balance?
Yeah. I mean, so what the Enneagram is going to do is it's going to give you a little bit of clarity about what your starting position is. So for example, a type 1, the perfectionist, is known for working very, very hard and always putting work before play, because this is a serious person who takes their responsibility really seriously. That's just good information to have. If you find out that you're a type 2, if you realize you're a type 2, the helper, you're going to learn that your habit of attention goes out to the needs of other people. You're probably checking your phone right before bed to see if anyone needs anything and checking it first thing in the morning. So you can start to understand that self-care is going to be a challenge. So it's not just that it shows how you're likely to get out of balance, but it also is going to give you, again, that context for why, so that you can try to come more into balance. I think work-life balance is a deeply personal question. Like, I don't think there's a objective number of hours in the day that are right. I think the idea is to be very present when you're doing everything you're doing, including relaxing, including not working. And I think that the Enneagram gives you a lot of context to help understand what makes that hard and how can you make it easier for yourself.
Mm.
Talk about it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I remember that. When you gave me advice on that as well, you were asking me, do you have a regular physical exercise practice? Because it's very important for your type. And I said, yes. And she said, then you said, yeah, that's very, very important. Otherwise, you're too much in your head and you disconnect from your body. And I could absolutely relate to that. And also, yeah, what you also just said about the second type, for example, that they also need to be careful about, not to conserve their energy, not to give everything to other people. So to really put a lot of intention on self-care. So yeah, and how many types do we have? 9? Is that
We have
correct?
9 different types. Yeah. So, and you can kind of think of it as 9 habits of attention. And people often ask, am I only one type? I seem far too complex, or do you change types over your lifetime? So it's a very complex system. So I say it's 9 types, but that really is the tip of the iceberg. And it has nothing to do with astrology, but it is complex in the same way astrology is complex. So I'd say it that way. You are your type. You're influenced by the numbers next to you. You've got an arrow, something called the arrows, how you behave under stress, how you behave when you're relaxed. So each type is really 5 different connecting points. Then there's 3 subtypes, there's 9 levels of development. It's a very, very complex system. But at the very basic level, what we're trying to understand is, where does your attention go? What do you pay the most attention to? So that is the first question that we try to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lynn, she's also offering Enneagram typing interviews. So I remember that because we started with that, and I find it super interesting. It's because I mean, you kind of lead it and you ask the right questions, but in the end, it's the client, himself who finds out what their type is. And I found it also super interesting to find out, so to which type do I go towards when I'm under stress and when I feel balanced, or when I'm balanced?
Yeah.
And
people really like the typing interviews. I mean, exactly what you said, one of the core ideas is that I can be an expert, but I'm not going to type you. You're going to type yourself. Because if we agree that the Enneagram is about motivation and not about behavior, you're the person who's going to have to say why you're doing what you're doing. So it actually empowers each person to recognize themselves. So kind of that at the top level, because I've done literally thousands of these interviews, I know how the different types answer. So I can have a pretty good idea of how you're answering. And most people say it's kind of like a mix between a therapy session, a consultation, and a psychic reading, because it's all mixed together in a certain way. It's kind of decoding the human psyche. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember also the chapters in your book that were talking about, okay, when you know your Enneagram type, so how is that working out with another Enneagram type? So in relationships. And I find this super interesting. So when we understand our Enneagram type and the one of our partner, how can this enhance like communication and improve the relationship and maybe overcome challenges? Or to see, because with everything, there are certain strengths, there are certain weaknesses. And then it's always up to us what we make out of it. So yeah, tell us a bit more about that. I'm super curious.
That was the entire topic of my second book. And the book is like 500 pages long because people had a lot to say. So I interviewed over 100 couples, understanding what were the strengths and the weaknesses. So a couple of things there. First, to answer the question, lots and lots of people wonder, are there types that go well together or types that shouldn't be together? And the answer to that is, it's actually less about type and more about self-awareness. So any type combination can be tremendously successful or tremendously unsuccessful. And it is less about what type they are, and it is more about how self-aware they are. So 2 highly self-aware people are going to have the best chance of success. 2 unself-aware people may stay together, but it probably isn't going to be a happy union. And if one person's highly self-aware and the other is highly unself-aware, sometimes at a certain point, that relationship will just collapse because it stops making sense. But any of the types can work well together. There is Enneagram theory that helps to describe what the natural strengths of 2 types together are going to be and what the natural challenges are going to be. So that is kind of the starting position. And then within that, each couple kind of finds its way of how they fit together. But that what the Enneagram can do is kind of give you a shortcut, again, to already recognize what you probably know are your strengths, but to also shine a light on, these are going to be the problems. And if you are starting to have these problems, here's a path back to come back into balance. And again, with the Enneagram, you're always trying to be more self-aware and to relax your habit of attention. Those are always the 2 things that are at play.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so when I think of Ayurveda, like for us, like we put a lot of attention to our daily routines.
Mhm.
And when I learned from you the different Enneagram types, and so I'm wondering, how do they influence, or how can we use that knowledge for the creation of personalized daily habits?
Yeah, what the Enneagram is going to help you understand is what holds you back from incorporating daily habits that you consciously have decided you want to do. So we all have lots of things that we want that we don't do for whatever reason, and different people will have different reasons why their daily habit, for example, collapses. Some types are naturally excellent at it. So I'll give you a very practical example. I had a woman come to one of my retreats in Greece where I combined Kundalini Yoga and the Enneagram. She was an INSEAD graduate. She was a very intelligent woman. She had never done Kundalini Yoga, and she really took to it because she saw how it was going to help her. She typed as an Enneagram type 5, which is called the investigator. And this is the very data-driven person. So she, from the day she left that retreat, she continued to do Kundalini Yoga every single day for like an hour a day for 2 years straight. And why was that possible? Because she had done the analysis and she had understood, she had believed what the value was going to be. And so for her, it was almost like a mathematical equation, like it just made sense. I'm a type 7. That would never work for me because I'm all about variety and, wanting to try new things. So for me, what would hold me back is being really regular would feel boring. So I would need more variety in my practice. And if you can understand your type, you can see what the block is and how to get past the block. So it's just going to be a lot easier to incorporate these habits that you know are good for you.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I found it very, very helpful to understand that. Also, I think you often in your book you mention, for example, for some Enneagram types, they have to take more care of the nervous system, others a little bit less. So this is also, I found that also very helpful to know. So tell us a little bit about when someone wants to work with you. So do you have any upcoming events, courses, any projects? I also know that you have a quite successful YouTube channel and also the two books, no, that you published. I think people can get them on your website. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I am offering a free 90-minute workshop on January 21st. It's called 27 Meditations for 27 Enneagram Subtypes. So like I said, there's 9 types, but there are 3 what we call instincts, which means we have 27 variations of personality. And what I do is I do a quick demonstration of each meditation that goes with each Enneagram subtype. So kind of just to tie back to what you were saying about Ayurveda, one of the Enneagram types is called a type 8, and type 8s move into action very quick, and they've got to watch their anger response. They can get a little too reactive. So for them, the meditation is 1-minute breath. It's to slow the breathing down. Right next to them, type 9 is called the peacemaker, has the exact opposite problem. They have a hard time getting going and they have a hard time expressing anger. So for them, the meditation is breath of fire. So you can really very cleanly link different personality styles with breath work and meditations that's going to work well for them. I twice a year offer a retreat in Paros, Greece, which is one of the islands where we combine Kundalini Yoga and the Enneagram. And we also add wellness. So you eat super healthy. You do yoga twice a day. We do 4 Enneagram discussions. We hang out on the beach together. So it's a nice way to build community. But it's kind of like a total reboot if someone wants to just restart and start with some really healthy habits. It's a great way to do a restart. So we do that twice a year. Like you said, I have my YouTube channel and I'm publishing at least a video per week, a mix of Kundalini Yoga and the Enneagram, and often combining the two. And then the main thing I'm really focusing on this year is I'm doing a lot more corporate training. So bringing the Enneagram into the workplace. And that's working with individuals who want leadership training or just help taking their career to the next level. And also teams, because we often find teams, maybe they're working okay, but they can work a lot better if they've got a little bit more context for who their colleagues are and how their colleagues are experiencing the world. So those are the main ways I'm working right now.
Mm. Okay, I also will put in the show notes your website, your YouTube channel, and also explore on Lynn's website the free meditations. I know you have many there, but for example, you have one for, I think, burning anger. Like you have different ones. Like you already offered in the past many meditation challenges, and I took part in them. Were about different topics. So for everyone who also wants to start maybe a meditation practice this year, I think that's a great way to start because you find also short ones, long ones. So for everyone, something is there.
Yeah, and I would just want to pause there for a minute because I think a lot of times what holds people back from establishing a regular practice is they've got this idea that it's got to be long. And I challenge that. I say start with 3 minutes a day and just do 3 minutes a day. Have that be how you begin and do that for a month or two. And after that, if you want to make it 6 minutes or 11 minutes or it's great. But if you can just be regular, but do 3 minutes every single day consecutively, you will see a tremendous amount of growth because it's actually that regularity. And I say, when I do my daily practice, it's like hitting the reset button on my computer. Everything, all those emotions that have kind of been compiling over the day, they get kind of washed away. And it really does feel like a reset. And it's nice.
I totally agree on that, what you said. So in my work, we call it the Kaizen approach, so that you do small continuous improvements, but over a long time. This doesn't mean that maybe at one day you will end up meditating for 45 minutes a day, but you start maybe with 1 minute and you make that work. And when that works and your body already kind of longs for it, craves for it, then automatically we want to have more of that. But I also say that all the time. It's more important to do something that is good for us on a regular basis instead of having one long session, maybe once per week or once per month. No. And that's how we build habits. So, as we wrap up, Lynn, looking back on your journey, what has been one of the most valuable lessons that you learned?
Boy. Yeah, and this is actually one that's almost just been unfolding recently. You touched on at the beginning kind of about our childhoods and our past. What I have learned through my own healing journey is that how I understand events from the past shifts actually as I've healed. And yogically, we have a saying, life isn't good, life isn't bad, life isn't anything. It's just raw material and how you interpret the events. And I have heard those words for many, many years, but I would definitely say as I've continued on my healing path, and I really credit that very much to this combination of the Enneagram and Kundalini Yoga, the things I was angry about maybe from my past, I see them the same way. Like I understand what happened, but I have a very different interpretation of them. They don't make me angry anymore. I can feel compassion. And it's interesting because it almost has made me question how much of this was my own wounding that was getting expressed, and not even really the situation, but just my own unhealed wounds. And so I've been just observing that a lot. And again, being very grateful to have these tools so that you can heal and you can really enjoy your life and have a present experience and not have these noisy stories from the past taking up a lot of space in your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the present, no. So it's to transform that, not to change the perception. I mean, what happened in the past can't be changed, but how we perceive it in the present moment, and how it influences our future. This is super important. So thank you so much, Lynn. I really enjoyed our interview. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you. I enjoyed being here. I wish you all the best of luck in 2024. I think for those of us who are working on our consciousness, it's going to be a great year. I feel like this is a year of polarization. Some people, like, we get to see their absolute worst behavior, but I think for those of us who are really taking an honest effort to raise our awareness, I think it's going to be an amazing year. So, yeah.
Let's use that energy. Thank you.
Thank you.